Our final session of the early morning tranche is going to look at one of the most vital issues raised by the situation in which we currently find ourselves. I have to say that when the COVID-19 crisis struck, I was profoundly encouraged by the way in which companies of all sizes and of all industries rushed to protect their employees and to emphasize the importance of employee health and safety, which seemed to be an issue that would unite all of us going forward. I'm not quite sure that it's played out as I would have anticipated, as many of us have lost patience with the lockdown, as many companies have dealt with employees who are divided over things as simple as whether to wear a mask. But clearly, the work environment and the relationship between companies and their employee stakeholders have been profoundly impacted over the last 12 months. The next session is going to look at how this crisis culture is changing workforce priorities. And it's going to ask whether those changes will be temporary or permanent. Here to do that is Ketchum partner and managing director and employee communications and engagement lead, Tamara Norman. Over to you, Tamara.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Tamara Norman, and I am a partner at Ketchum. I'm thrilled to be here today to chat with our fantastic panelists, Melissa Sylvia from Tyson Foods and Kimberly Bendros from Georgia Pacific. Before we introduce the panelists, I just wanted to take a moment to set up our conversation. For the next 45 minutes, we are going to be focused on what I think is the most important stakeholder to companies right now, and that's the employee. Across every industry, employees' lives have been significantly impacted this year. From COVID-19 to the social justice movement to the upcoming presidential election here in the US in a few short weeks, we've been studying this at Ketchum and found that the events of this year have dramatically changed the expectations and values of the workforce. You can go to the next slide. In our recent Work Shift 2020 study, we found that almost 2/3 of American workers say that the pandemic has prompted them to completely reevaluate their professional priorities. We found 4 distinct personas making up today's workforce, which you can actually see on the slide here. Knowing how your employees are thinking is critical to engagement. On the next slide, you can see just a few of the statistics that stand out, and we'll talk a little bit about this today. For starters, traditional engagement themes such as career development and advancement are all taking a back seat now to new topics. More than half of the American workforce says that feeling safe at work is more important than actually being promoted. And at the same time, the importance of company values has skyrocketed. 79% say that their employer values are more important to them now than before the pandemic. These big shifts taking place have signaled to many organizations the need to hit reset on employee communications. For employers, the already high stakes of employee engagement just got higher, and the challenges are more complex. So joining me to talk about how all of this is impacting internal communications today, as I said, Melissa Sylvia, she's the Director of Executive Communications and Team Member Engagement at Tyson Foods, and Kimberly Bendros, she is the Senior Corporate Communications Manager at Georgia Pacific. So I'd like to turn it over to Melissa first to quickly introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her role.
Melissa Sylvia, as Tamara said, I am the Director of Internal Communications and Executive Communications at Tyson Foods. In my role, our team is responsible for making sure that we're getting all the communications that our team members, our employees both need and want. That includes a span of our corporate employees as well as our frontline in our facilities across the nation and in many countries globally. Additionally, our team supports our executive communications. So the focus there is really on helping our leaders connect with our team members and get the information to them, and also open up dialogue for two-way feedback to understand what is on our team members' minds so that our leaders can take action on those concerns.
Great. Kimberly.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Bendros. I am a Senior Internal Communications Manager at Georgia Pacific, very similar to Melissa. Our team is responsible for internal and external communications. We spend most of our time communicating to our 35,000 employees at Georgia Pacific across the world, and we are responsible for executive leadership, keeping our leaders in tune with our employees' wants and needs and what's going on in our facilities.
Great. Okay, so we're going to get right to the questions. I have lots, but for our participants, if you have a question, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get to them as well during the next 40 minutes or so. Okay, so I'm particularly excited that we have both of you on this panel, not only because you're doing amazing work in internal communications, but because of the industries in which you work. To say you work in essential industries is an understatement. Between protein and paper products, you know, you were both really significantly impacted during COVID and continue to be. So I want to start with a COVID-related question. As manufacturing companies, both of you had to shift your operations, your protocols, safety measures when the pandemic hit. So how did you approach internal communications in delivering all the messages around change and safety? And what were some of the lessons that you learned from that? Melissa, you want to start?
Sure. For us, you know, health and safety has always been a top priority, but it certainly went into the spotlight as a result of everything happening with the pandemic. From the business side, you know, that meant introducing additional measures to keep our team members safe. For example, you know, checking symptoms, taking temperatures at facility entrances and things like that. But for communications, it meant we had to really take a look at the tools available to us to make sure that we were reaching team members so that they understood the changes that we were implementing and the things that we were doing to protect them and keep them safe so they could continue to do the work that is incredibly valuable. You know, it's looking at the technology that was available to us, and in some cases, you know, looking at that differently and figuring out how do we engage team members in new and different ways, whether that's through conferencing apps, video conferencing apps, digital things like that, or just, you know, doubling up on the amount of communication, the cadence and things that we're doing to reach them directly. I think for us, a really big lesson is just a reminder of how critical it is to reach your team members with the information that they need and that they want, so they feel informed and like they understand what the company is doing to take care of them.
And Kimberly, what about for Georgia Pacific?
You know, it was mid-March and we were all hearing about the pandemic, and then boom, there's no toilet paper available. So literally overnight, the shelves went bare. So we as a communications team got on a call and was like, okay, we got to get together. We got to address this internally and externally. So from an external point, the first thing we really got to do, we sprang into action and we talked to the media. We dismantled the facts. We are an essential business. Toilet paper is made right here in the USA. It's not made in China. And we are safe, we're healthy, and we're working. So that was our first spring of action from an internal standpoint and from an external point. We want to make sure our employees know the facts as soon as possible. And we immediately set up an internal site and an external site so our employees could get the firsthand information about our company, our business, and what we were doing as related to the pandemic. So then from an internal standpoint, you know, what do you do to communicate with 20,000 workers that are in a pandemic, scared to come to work, trying to get toilet paper themselves, wondering why we can't, you know, get it faster to everybody. So we really set up virtual town halls. We did dashboards. One thing that was key, we made sure every essential worker had their paperwork. So when they were going into our facilities, they had that paperwork that they were supposed to be out, an essential worker going to and from our operations. That was good. We did a lot of digital signage. We did a lot of untraditional things. We had our public affairs managers on their iPhones recording us making toilet paper so we could get that to the media, we can get that to our customers and show that we're working as fast as we can during this pandemic. So we did a lot of that. For an internal team, we met every day, twice a day, to kind of make sure we all had the same data and the same knowledge, and what we were disseminating was the same to our employees as to our external audiences. So we kind of put just together a COVID communications team that took action, immediately. And I think the lesson learned, our lesson learned was sometimes we take a lot of time, and sometimes it's just, you got to get it out there. Short, quick, concise messaging. We don't need to go through 1,000 edits. We don't need to go through 1,000 people to talk about it. We got to get it to our people, and we want to reassure our employees that we're being as transparent as possible to our internal and external audiences. So that was a lesson learned, just move a little faster.
That's great. That's great. I mentioned in my open about how employees are the #1 stakeholder right now, and that we've seen a major shift in employee priorities, across the world, across this country this year, from safety to DE&I to being more values focused. Can you both talk a little bit about what kinds of shifts that you've seen in your employee priorities this year, and how, as communicators, kind of what changes you've made to address some of those? Kimberly, you just talked a little bit about speed and having to think differently about that, but what are some other changes to to really understand your employees and make sure that you're addressing their priorities?
Well, the #1 priority, I think, for all of us shifted, which was health of ourselves and our families. So sometimes as a communicator, we're really busy communicating the business wants, the business needs, and things that are important to us. But this time around with COVID, while the business needs and wants are very important, the health and safety of our employees is #1. It's always #1 in our mind. So we kind of led with our hearts a little bit and said, hey, first thing first, let's talk about you. Are you healthy? Are you safe? Are you healthy to come in our facilities? Is your family okay? And so a lot of our communications led with that in mind, hearts in mind. And then in addition to that, we spent a lot of time promoting some of those, we call them soft benefits. We've got, this is a pandemic. You've never had to talk to your child about a pandemic. You need a little bit of assistance from a counseling situation. We all joke in the office about the COVID-15 that we've all gained. So we wanted to really push our health and wellness benefits. We have support to help you lose that weight, or if you're eating because you're nervous or whatever kind of, we have tools in place with our benefits program. So we spent a lot of time talking about those soft benefits and just kind of reminding employees that we're here for you, and we understand that this is a pandemic and we're all going through it together.
I love that, leading with the heart. Melissa, what about at Tyson?
Yeah, I think for us, health and safety and inclusion and diversity, both already very, very big topics, but what this has done is it's really created space for us to intentionally just increase our ability to bring those topics into the conversation and into the messages. So, some of the things that we're seeing is leaders are intentionally making inclusion an active part of town halls and virtual meetings and things of that, encouraging our team members to be open to sharing what's on their mind, creating a safe space for people to ask questions or talk about things that matter to them, and helping them understand the things that we're doing to take care of them. We have an incredibly diverse group of team members. We have 141,000, and that spans different countries. And, we're proud of that. What that also means is, that our team members represent, dozens of countries across our facilities. And that is, over 54 languages are represented by that team member base. So not only creating a space for them to feel comfortable speaking up, but making sure we're reaching them in a way that they can easily comprehend and understand. In some cases that might be a language other than English. So just reaching them in a way that is tailored to their needs and wants.
That's great. I think particularly this year, we've seen and we know that employees have needed and really wanted to hear more from leaders in these times in which we're living. I think you touched on it a little bit, Kimberly, in terms of employees are looking for guidance, and their personal situations and priorities have evolved, tremendously. And that requires a lot of understanding and empathy and humanity from leadership. So, in thinking about this year, I think leaders have struck a different tone and cadence in how they communicate with employees. And frankly, I don't think it's something we can go back to. I mean, we've set that tone now, and I think it's a reset that we won't go back. So as internal communications leaders, how have you thought about leadership communications this year? And how have you also, in addition to leadership communications, incorporated two-way dialogue to ensure that, you know, you're getting that important feedback from your team members. Kimberly, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, honestly, we doubled down on our leadership communication. We tripled communications from our CEO and all our business leaders. One thing that we learned as a team is, you know, sometimes it doesn't have to be sweet and polished. We literally had our CEO at his home with his iPhone editing with his teenage son and sending over videos that we quickly might have spruced up a little bit, but we just got the information out there. Our employees wanted to have timely, updated information from our leader. And so that's what we really did. We didn't spend a lot of time on thinking or overthinking about it, just got him on camera to release a message weekly, sometimes twice a week, what was going on with operations, how he was feeling, what he was seeing and going on in the world, and really just letting him express his feelings to our employees about the pandemic. So that was one thing that we definitely changed, but we increased leadership altogether, two-way communications using social media, LinkedIn, really created that two-way dialogue. Like I said, we had our intranet page and we were able to let people comment and he responded back, we all responded back, and really addressed any concerns or issues our employees were having, personal or professional, you know, during this crisis.
Melissa?
I think for us, it was the same, very, very similar. At the beginning, leadership just had a desire to make sure that they were reaching out to team members. So in March, when things, you know, really started when the pandemic really started to hit, leaders were reaching out. They were recording videos, again, very, you know, just something quick and meaningful, getting that message out over, you know, as Kimberly said, you know, not trying to polish and perfect the message, but making sure that we were reaching them. And so we've continued to build onto that, you know, as we've progressed, introducing other video programs. One of the recent things that we introduced is a series that brings together one of our leaders with team members from some of our facility locations to talk, you know, with Tyson Foods, we're talking about food, but we're also talking about topics that are top of mind. And so from that, we're able to hear the questions that they're thinking about, what they want to know, and hear that feedback, but engage them in a more meaningful way. And we're looking to introduce other programs similar to that. We've added, you know, live Q&A to our town halls. We're looking at other technologies to reach our team members more broadly, giving them a chance to submit, you know, questions, comments, things that are on their mind, and helping our leaders connect with them more directly as much as possible. Continuing to explore other technologies to hopefully do that, but we've seen a lot of positive response from the team members as, you know, they continue to hear from our leaders. Definitely, I think tripled, Kimberly said, was a good way to put it. We've really just focused on sure that our team members are hearing from leaders and feel like they're connected to information and staying updated.
Right. And I don't think it's a situation where we'll go back to not having that level of leadership communications. Employees have really come to expect that now and appreciate it. And so I think it's here to stay, which is fantastic. I want to remind our participants, if they have questions, to please put them in the chat and we will get to them momentarily, but start thinking of those questions. As I mentioned in my opening, the shift in employee mindset happened really quickly this year. And we know that now in looking at the workforce around the world, flexibility has almost become more important than career advancement for a lot of employees. And so this year seems to have accelerated the idea of workplace of the future in a lot of ways. How has your organization adapted to that flexibility in the workplace this year? And specifically for your corporate employees, how have you stayed connected and help them stay motivated in a remote environment?
Do you want me to take that one first?
Sure, Kimberly.
Okay. You know, one thing, Georgia Pacific has been essential, deemed essential from the beginning. So our corporate and headquarter employees, we've always been open. So the beginning of the pandemic, we said, okay, guys, we don't know what's going on. Let's go home and work away from home. Let's work, you know, remotely first couple of weeks. And so that's what we did. And we got our social distancing things in place. We got our mask stations in place. We got our procedures, safety protocols in place, and said, if you feel comfortable to come back, go ahead and come back into the headquartered office. We were kind of prepared for this ahead of time. I really think that we thought, as we see trends in the workplace, we did a big reconstruction of our building. We've got a blue sky environment, so you can work anywhere, anytime. 99% of our employees already had laptops and networks are ready to go. So when this happened, we didn't feel any pressure. We knew we could work from home. We knew we could stay connected and get the job done. And so now it's about balancing working from home, our headquarter employees, and some are working from the offices, some are working, where they feel safe and what best works for their schedule. So we've really encouraged everybody to do what's best for their family and their family first, and work with your manager, supervisor to let them know what's going on. If it's a childcare situation, if it's a health situation, we're really being more flexible we are still in a pandemic. But lots of options, but we have not missed a beat. We've been able to keep up with technology, no problem.
That's great. And Melissa, how about at Tyson?
Yeah, I think similarly, the virtual meeting setup is not new for any of us, right? But the scale at which we're having to connect and rely on that is, and as as much as people, the flexibility is really, really important. But we also, know that being remote, sometimes we miss the interaction that you get with your colleagues at the office. So staying connected, just leveraging, we have, the chat apps and the video conferencing and some of the others. Whereas I think in previous, pre-COVID world, you might have a virtual meeting and not everybody will be on camera, but like consistently, everyone's on camera, everyone's engaging. Any opportunity to really connect as close to real time as possible, even over, through technology, has been very, very important. And the flexibility we're in a world where that's necessary. It's been an interesting shift. As Kimberly said, with childcare and other accommodations, our focus has really been on people feeling comfortable to accommodate what they need to, because we're still delivering, we're still getting the job done. The team is doing, so well in that. And to be able to do that in this kind of new dynamic has been an interesting shift. Again, we might be working a little bit differently, but the culture of who we are has stayed constant through that. And so just continuing to take advantage of those, technology opportunities to stay connected has been really, really valuable.
I love that. The idea that even though you're remote, the culture has remained intact. And, I know you guys have both been working hard on making sure that those cultures and those cultural opportunities still exist. So we have a question that's come in from one of our participants. It's a great question. Have either of your companies found Yammer or another internal social media platform to be valuable this year? So the question is really around what kinds of internal social media platforms and other maybe technologies that you're using to communicate internally. Kimberly, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, we find Yammer to be very valuable. We always use Yammer, but during the pandemic, we definitely used it more. We created a specific one for parents. We also have one that we do COVID updates on Yammer on a weekly. In the beginning, it was a daily basis. Our employees really know that's the go-to besides our intranet page and our regular gp.com. But Yammer was an opportunity for people to talk, give their experiences, tell us kind of what's going on in our facilities, tell us how they're feeling. And we did a lot of feedback with Yammer. Yammer was a great choice for us at Georgia Pacific.
And I think for us, Microsoft Teams is something that we found incredibly valuable in just connecting quickly. You can create the various groups that you need, but you can also kind of tackle one-on-one conversations, and there's video conferencing opportunities embedded in there, in addition to other technologies that we're using. But just that very quick and easy connectability through the Teams function has been incredibly helpful.
Great. That was a great question. Keep the questions coming from the participants. So we are, as I said, a few short weeks away from the U.S. presidential election, and obviously a very important election in this country. In many states, we're seeing early voting, and mail-in voting is already happening. And this year more than ever, we're seeing companies engage in the process and put a focus on it with their employees. What are some of the programs that that both Georgia Pacific and Tyson that you all are putting in place, whether it's emphasizing or promoting, supporting civic engagement? Melissa, you want to take that one first?
Sure. I think first and foremost, we've been very, vocal with our team members about just encouraging, from a nonpartisan standpoint, however you choose to vote, just, make your voice heard has been our focus. As a company, we joined Time to Vote, which is a business-led nonpartisan coalition working to increase voter participation in the U.S. elections. One of the things that we did to celebrate National Voter Registration Day in September was we hosted a week-long voter registration drive at our locations, and we had information available. It was unmanned, so it was, safe social distancing measures in place, but providing a wealth of information to team members in their local facilities in addition to online information, and really just focused on communicating to them to make sure they have the information that they need and they understand their options on voting and how they can do so safely.
Kimberly, what about at Georgia Pacific? Similar?
Yes, very, very similar. Georgia Pacific this year and every year takes civic engagement very serious. We've always encouraged our employees to get out and rock the vote. So that is what we've done this year. We've started with making sure that people know that, where you can vote at, where your polling location is, and where you can find information. In addition to that, we want to make sure that everyone knows their choice, mail in or go in person. If it is a flexibility, we provide flexibility with voting. So we've very similar to what Melissa said. We're encouraging people to get out and vote for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think another thing that we've seen this year, very publicly, major companies praising their frontline workers on a national stage, and maybe recognizing and rewarding employees individually. And I think it's been really important this year to make the connection between the important work that your team members are doing to the societal value that it brings, whether they're feeding the world, right, or they're supplying the world with paper products. Can you talk a little bit about how you've thought about employee recognition this year, and acknowledgement of that, whether it's your corporate workers or your frontline workers?
Yeah,
Okay, sure. It's been a very, very challenging year for everybody. And so one thing we thought about doing was we want to hear from our frontline employees. We want to thank them. So we got our sales teams together and they wrote over 500 notes to our sales team, to our frontline employees, just personalized notes thanking them for everything they're doing, coming in every day and making toilet paper and paper products for everybody. In addition to that, we really took some time to thank some of our heroes, as we call them. We've got veterans. So we did a veterans video thanking our frontline employees that are veterans that in addition to working in our facilities, they're out in the pandemic live. Some of them are nurses, some of them are EMTs, and they work at Georgia Pacific, but they also have this great role as a veteran. So we did veterans appreciation videos. We've also done thank you videos from our leaders. We've done them on social media. We've done them on LinkedIn. We just did it in a variety of ways and a variety of versions, so we could reach people on Yammer, reach people online, reach people on Facebook, to just show our employees appreciation. So instead of just doing one steady corporate video, we really took the time to do multiple videos on multiple platforms so people could see it and just really show our appreciation.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
So what about at Tyson?
Yeah, and we know also, our team members had already had a really strong sense of pride, for, again, essential, the value that they bring, in our case, helping feed the world. So thank you messages, absolutely, similar to, what Kimberly said, whether it's on social or, videos, blog posts, different things, just making sure that they were hearing loud and clear how valuable they were, how much of a difference that they were making, and how appreciated they are. One of the other things we've tried to do is really increase our storytelling to share team members' individual stories and highlight, just their personal stories and how they're making a difference at a local level, and sharing that across. We know that our team members enjoy hearing about others like themselves. And so creating that connectivity across the company and showing, the culture and the family nature that we have. And at the same time, raising up, onto kind of into the spotlight, the great, who they are and the great work that they're doing.
Yeah, I even saw a Tyson ad that was promoting family and your employees. So really great work there. Another question from one of the participants, and that's around measurement of your activities this year, whether it's measuring the effectiveness of your internal communications or measuring internal engagement. what are some of the things that you're doing to really stay on top of kind of the measurement of all of the activities that you're doing and measuring internal engagement? Kimberly, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, one thing that we have done a better job, I think, on is we're really looking at our clicks. We're really looking at which videos have really got those high numbers. Were they passionate? Were they about business? But what leaders were they from? And kind of really seeing where employees like and don't like. And so that's been our biggest measurement tool, just saying, okay, this video got no hits. Probably don't want to talk about this, or maybe we should do that another way. So just really being conscious about, you know, what we're sending out and what responses we're getting. So I don't know if that's the perfect answer, but we've been paying a better attention to it for sure.
And Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar approach, looking at, you know, at clicks and engagement, you know, on the video side, looking at, you know, the number of views, you know, that enables us to really make content decisions, right? As, you know, Kimberly said, what's generating the interest. And in, you know, one of the platforms we use, we're able to see like length, you know, they might watch a video, it might be a 2-minute video that they watch for 30 seconds, or do they watch the whole thing? So seeing what's holding their interest as much as generating it initially. And then, you know, for emails that we send out, that looking at what they're clicking on and how that's, you know, driving where, you know, where they're looking to find out more information, so that we can build that into, you know, future content as we look at that. So really very, very similar.
We have another question, very similar from a measurement standpoint. The question is around, how are you keeping a pulse on how employees are feeling during this current climate? Are you using surveys, focus groups, you know, internal engagement surveys like Glint? How are you keeping your finger on that pulse? I know, Kimberly, you talked about, you know, leading from the heart and really looking at the personal side of, you know, of your employees' lives first. You know, have you used things like focus groups and surveys to stay on top of that?
Yeah, we've used surveys to, you know, see how employees have been feeling. We definitely have done surveys, and we've done a lot of our Yammer groups, focusing on our Yammer groups and what they're talking about and sharing and what concerns are. So those have been our biggest surveys, definitely for leaders to kind of get the pulse of the organization. And in addition to that, you really using that Yammer feedback tool, because it's awesome. Anybody can log on from anywhere and just share or post, and people comment. So really monitoring those comments and finding out what are the topics employees want to talk about.
Right. And have you, in using Yammer specifically, and you've seen those topics pop up, has it, you know, have you had to, you know, change strategy or shift gears or say, wait a minute, we should be focusing on this because, you know, it's coming up a lot?
Yeah, there's been a couple of instances where we're like, you know, employees keep talking about this. They keep talking about this. We need to get our leader to talk about this and say what we want to do about this. Yeah, so there's definitely been feedback, and we've seen it and tossed it up to leadership and said, we're hearing about this. Let's talk about this in your next video. For sure.
Great. And Melissa, what about at Tyson? Surveys, focus groups?
Yeah, definitely. Surveys, we're always trying to take advantage of that. I mean, I would say a little bit of all of the above. We, you know, without, you know, creating, you know, survey fatigue, trying to reach groups of team members so that they feel, you know, empowered to share their voice, but not like overbearing, like you're constantly surveying them. So surveys, we have a digital app that we're piloting, and that's a way to get kind of a quick pulse check. One of the other things that, you know, in kind of the focus group side, but also in, you know, a hybrid of our executive communications efforts is, you know, as our leaders visit local facilities and visit with team members, sort of a focus group, but really just sitting down and connecting with them, right? We're trying to generate feedback, understand what's on their mind. It's, you know, we're certainly taking feedback from that, but that's just as much about connecting with them as getting the feedback. So it's kind of in that focus group bucket, but really just, you know, our leaders going out and visiting directly with team members, you know, following safety guidelines, of course, but connecting with them in person.
That's great. Okay, the questions are coming in now. Fast and furious, which is great. Keep them coming. We have about 10 more minutes. One of the questions is about productivity. Are you measuring it? And this year, has it increased, decreased, or stayed the same in the current environment?
Well, from our perspective, from our internal comms team perspective, and we laugh and joke, while we may be at home, we probably worked more the last 6 months than we have worked in a very long time. But from our mill standpoint, productivity is a big deal. We definitely are spending all our days and nights trying to make as much paper products as we can to get on the shelves. So we don't have to measure it because we know we're doing it. We're producing it and it's going out the doors fast and furious. Yeah.
Right. And Melissa, what about at Tyson?
Yeah, similarly, you know, keeping food on the shelves in the stores so that people are able to feed their families. I think, again, you know, to echo Kimberly's point for, you know, our corporate communications team and our corporate team members, it's, you know, in some cases, it's like making sure people, you know, pause to take kind of a mental break during their day and not, you know, pushing so hard, because it is, you know, it's important work. It's valuable, you know, this essential businesses, right? And so helping, you know, productivity from a, you know, outcome standpoint has never been an issue. We're continuing to deliver, continuing to make a difference. So part of our focus has really been around not so much measuring productivity, but making sure people are taking care of themselves, you know, mental health and things of that nature, that they're keeping that top of mind as they continue to, you know, make a difference and help feed the world.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of that too from our clients on the on more on the corporate side. Those employees that are working from home are working longer, harder hours, just based on the nature of communications and what we do, but also the fact that, you know, oftentimes there's not, you know, there's not a distance between the home office and you know, and your personal life. And so it's been, you know, a very busy year for a lot of us, and that break hasn't happened. So I understand what you're saying there, Kimberly, about, you know, the productivity actually increasing and never working harder. So we have another question related to kind of a wave 2 of COVID, right? Or phase 2. Some people say we're in it. Some people say we're headed for it. You know, a tough fall and winter. How are you thinking about it internally from a communication standpoint? Are you thinking about a wave 2 and preparing for it? Are you staying the course? You know, from a crisis standpoint, how are you thinking about it and how are you preparing for it? Kimberly?
We're definitely thinking about it and preparing for it. You know, we are listening to what science is saying and what the CDC is saying. And so we're preparing that we will see COVID, you know, throughout this flu and cold season. A lot of our communications right now direct towards open enrollment, and a lot of those messaging also are talking about the flu shot. In addition to that, just remaining through the holiday season healthy, tips you can do with your family to stay healthy and social distance through this, you know, Thanksgiving, holiday, Christmas season that's coming up that we all look forward to. It's going to be different this year, and how we can all stay protected and how we can stay safe and keep our operations running while still enjoying our friends and family. So we're putting those messages and getting those things at top of mind. And it's definitely on our, you know, it's definitely on our radar that we've got to make sure to keep the momentum going, keep people healthy and safe, in addition to running our operations. So yeah, we're definitely thinking about it and we're trying to prepare for it, but it's one of those things you just can't prepare for. So we're just going with the flow.
I think that's, I mean, that absolutely, because, you know, despite COVID, you know, the usual stuff still continues, right? Like normal business still goes on. Like you mentioned, you know, open enrollment and things, you know, that are typical with the season. We have to account for those. So very, very similarly, you know, you know, we feel like going through the earlier part of this year when this hit more unexpectedly, we've got some things in place. You know, Tamara, you mentioned, you know, you can never truly go back at this point. We're kind of past a point of no return. So the lessons from there are helping us plan as much as we can. But, you know, Kimberly, to echo your point, we can only plan so much because we don't truly know how it's going to play out. So we've got as much as we can in place, continuing to hit on those core business things that are still happening, continuing to hit on safety messaging and all of those important things in the environment that we're in. But knowing if something changes, we've got, you know, the pieces in place that we can take action at the time.
Right, right. That's terrific. One of the things that we've been hearing this year, or seeing actually too, is the idea that that resources have shifted from within communications departments from external to internal, whether that be, you know, bodies and human resources to, to agency budgets to, tools for communicating. Did you have to see a shift, within your own teams or within your own corporate communications departments this year from external to internal, given the importance of everything we've been talking about the last 45 minutes?
From Georgia Pacific, we didn't really see a shift. I think we've kept up with external as equally as internal because they're both very important. People want to know, from an internal standpoint, employees, keeping them engaged, keeping them making our products. But from an external standpoint, toilet paper was you turn on the news and you're watching, CNN or ABC and they're talking about toilet paper. It's very fascinating. And people want it and need it, and paper towels. And so we've kind of just struck an equal balance. I will say as a team, typically I focus on internal, but to help my external colleague, I've definitely taken a media call. We've all done that if we need to do that, or done fact checking or getting information. We've kind of just really gathered as a team to get through the pandemic. I will say that. So while I wear the internal communications hat, if I have to help out another way, we've all pitched in and done it for sure to get the job done.
Yeah, I would agree. I think especially now more than ever before, the ability of our team to become so much more cross-functional, and we already worked well together, but this has really just kind of shined a light on nothing is really truly one space or the other. At a certain level, the message crosses all of those. So I would agree for us. I don't know that it was necessarily a resource shift. It certainly, there was, a clear light on the importance of internal communications in a different way than maybe before the pandemic. So it's recognized. But, as Kimberly said, for Georgia Pacific, for us, the ability of our team to work together and collaborate to get consistent messaging, whether it's internal or team member facing, has been one of my favorite things, is the way that the team has come together. It's just such a good feeling to be surrounded by colleagues and you're all, working towards the same goal and trying to make a difference for the team.
I love that. I really do. So we are going to be wrapping it up here in a moment. And I'd just love to kind of one last question. As you think about, your own, personal growth this year and really what you've had to go through, how would you summarize that in terms of, maybe in a few short takeaways, whether it's your own growth, your team's growth, but as you look back on what we've been through in this crisis culture of 2020, how would you describe that?
Wild. You go home and say, oh, we're just going to work from home a couple of days in the middle of March and not think anything about it. And it turns into 8 months of working from home, and just being in a crisis communications mode. So my response is it's been wild.
Yeah. I think the same, just, you never know what the team is capable of until you're really tested. And again, going back to encouraging us to be mindful of our individual health and all of that. But at the same time, if you'd asked me a year ago, the scale and the impact of what we're doing and the ability to make a difference, there, you can never predict. And so just the significance of that and seeing how much the team has been able to deliver, and, individually, how much more, again, you never know what you're capable of until, you're tested.
Right, exactly. And this has definitely been a year of being tested. Kimberly, Melissa, thank you so much. We're coming up on the end of our time. I want to thank you for sharing all of your invaluable insights and your experience this year on internal communications. Really, really great session, and appreciate your time. So with that, I guess we are turning it back over to Paul and to the conference organizers. Thank you again, Kimberly and Melissa, and for all the participants.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
And thank you, Tamara. My apologies for the earlier butchering of your name. Calling you Tamara several times. I was not trying to do a Dave Perdue on you, I promise.
No worries.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Glad that we got to touch on all of the cultural issues and employee communications issues early in this event because they've become absolutely critical, or even more critical, over the last 9 months. And I'm sure we'll be returning to a lot of those issues in future sessions. We are now going to take a 15-minute break. Not everybody can stay glued to a Zoom screen for 5 or 6 straight hours. And then we will be back with our second group of sessions. We'll be looking at issues of globalization in an age of nativism, and asking how companies can deal with those conflicting pressures. We'll be looking at purpose in an era of social unrest, and a related topic, authenticity. Purpose without authenticity, I suspect, in this environment is very, very difficult and likely to backfire. And we'll have 2 sessions that are looking at those issues separately, but presumably overlappingly. Thank you very much for your attention this morning. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and I'll see everybody in 15 minutes. Thank you.